Welcome to my multimodal project. My multimodal object is a collage of the drawings that I analyzed in my research and a new piece of fan art I painted very recently specifically for this project. This collage will be shown in the last section of this video. My research was on how fan art can function as a tool for gaining self-confidence in one's artistic abilities as well as a tool for practicing and learning various artistic skills and techniques. Fan art is art created in relation or reference to some other source of media, like TV shows or movies, books, music, and basically anything that has a fandom tied to it. Creating fan art has many benefits, from helping improve mental health and developing community, to encouraging an artist to learn and practice new techniques and skills. For my methodology, I chose to analyze fan art I created when I was 12 or 13 for the show Steven Universe. Some of the characters I drew were actual characters in the show, but most of them were characters I created. In my analysis, I mostly focused on the skills I learned from the drawings: line work and shape, drawing from a reference, basic character design, and how to tell a story in one image, among other things. I also focused on how the drawings were important for myself as a young artist. To actually draw something and have it look how it was supposed to look, and to gain more confidence in my creative ideas and skills as an artist. I primarily focused on this from a young artist's perspective, but in creating this new piece of art for this project, I reminded myself that I always have skills to learn and expand upon. Throughout painting this new work, I learned things that I didn't even realize I didn't know how to do yet. This is the painting I made for this project. To be clear, this painting has nothing to do with Steven Universe. I have not been interested in anything to do with Steven Universe in nearly a decade. Instead, I painted the main character of my favorite horror podcast I really love, called The Magnus Archives. In a section of my literature review in my paper, it was brought up that creating fan art can also function as a tool for motivating artists to learn and practice new skills and can be more engaging for artists. I could not get myself to paint a piece of art for something I don't care about. I feel despite very different genres of source materials between my old fan art and the recent fan art, it is appropriate to combine them for this project, as this is a somewhat visual representation of my research. As I said earlier, I learned a lot from this project, especially from this painting. I started with a sketch that I then redrew and added all the detail I would need to on my final paper. The base drawing I did on my final paper gave me more practice with different styles of clothing, drawing a character in a specific pose, and using various reference pictures to get the pose anatomically correct. I struggled with getting the angle of the arms and hands the most, and probably drew and erased 20 shoulders and arms in at least 50 attempts at hands. Once I finally got my sketch to the point that I was happy with it, I moved on to painting it. I have very little experience painting people, so almost the entire process of this painting was a learning curve. I first was forced to realize that the paint I was mixing up on my palette would look different the second I put it on the page. I had to repaint the green eyes and the character's skin many times to get the colors how I wanted them to be. I think one of the biggest learning experiences I had with this step was adding the creases and extremely tiny details. Before this project, I had never actually used any of my detail brushes I own. So when painting the creases in the sweater, every single brush stroke I was learning how to use the brush more effectively to get the more desired outcome. I also learned that the different lengths of bristles between the detailed brushes create different effects. I keep going on and on about how much I learned with the brushes. I also experimented with adding a small amount of water to my acrylic paint to make it slightly transparent for the fog effect. I wanted the details on the shirt and sweater to peek through under the fog because I spent time and energy on them, but I made the fog thicker when covering the shoe and the face because I didn't like how the shoe ended up, and I just could not figure out how to paint the face in a way that I liked. Once I was happy with where it was at, I did my best to photograph it with minimal glare reflecting off the paint to make the next part of this project easier. This is the finished collage. To make it, I had to first make everything digital because the original drawings are still in my first sketchbook back in Idaho, where I'm from. Thankfully, this semester I took Computers in the Arts, and that class focuses on Adobe products, specifically Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and Dreamweaver. The first 3 programs I listed were all used during various steps of this entire project. I first took every drawing and made a mask of just the character, getting rid of the paper that they came from because I didn't want the notebook texture in the background of the collage. This was thankfully a fairly easy process and only took me like 2 to 3 hours in total because there wasn't that much detail or surface area on the drawings. In comparison, I did the same thing for my painting, but because of multiple factors, this took me at least 6 hours. The large amount of detail that I included in the painting, like the hair and the hands and the fabric creases, made it so I had to go very slow and carefully as I included more and more of the paper in the mask. The texture and shading of the paper and the paint made it so that the computer missed massive spots that I needed to add to the mask using the magic wand tool, so I had to add those after I used the tool. And the just amount of surface area I had to go around repeatedly to get it as clean as I wanted was many times larger than all of the drawings combined. With that being said, I'm very happy with how the mask turned out, and the painting, it was very much worth the time that I spent, and it also functioned as a great practice for using masking tools in Photoshop, as it had been quite a few months since the last time I used them. I then linked every single mask I made into a new project for the final collage. I knew I wanted my painting front and center and clearly the main focus, but I was undecided on the layout of all of the drawings. I must have moved them around, inverted them, rotated them, and grown and shrunk them 100 or more times until I decided the layout that you see here. I then realized that leaving them on a plain white background looked really unfinished, so I again got the opportunity to practice the skills that I learned in my class on this project. I made the background have crumpled paper texture because I felt like it would fit with the notebook-lined texture that the drawings all have, and I lowered its opacity slightly to not detract from the main elements of the work. I then, on top of it, added a radial gradient of green to a yellowy orangey color. I feel like the green helped add an aura effect to my painting. It helped fill some of the empty space in the background, and the yellowy orangey color helped tie in the drawings to the total piece. I ended the collage by slightly adjusting saturation of the painting because it wasn't popping in the way that I wanted it to. I at first tried adjusting contrast and brightness, but it wasn't giving the effect that I wanted until I found saturation and realized that that was what I was looking for. Approaching this project as a whole, I had a lot of worries about my skills as an artist and my ability to remain motivated and productive from start to finish. I only call myself an artist in the sense that it's a hobby of mine that I've had for longer than I can remember, but it's not something that I engage with regularly, and I haven't done a painting even similar to this in years. This project served as a brilliant reminder to not underestimate my own skills and ability to learn new techniques. My painting and the collage turned out just as good as I wanted it to in my head, and it genuinely made me feel so much more confident in what I can do as long as I'm interested in it. I didn't necessarily approach this collage thinking that I would prove to myself my own thesis. I approached primarily with the goal of showing a theme of like old work versus new work and just how time has changed my style over the last decade. I never thought I would learn as much as I did. I never thought I would practice all the things that I learned in class as much as I did. I never once thought that this project would boost my feelings about my abilities as a painter and as a creative person in general. This has been a deeply satisfying and uplifting project, and I'm so glad I did it. Thank you for watching.